America depends on Canada for almost all its wheat imports. But when President Trump tried to use tariffs as a weapon, Prime Minister Mark Carney showed him what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you. Trump believed wheat was just another bargaining chip. He thought he could slap tariffs on Canadian wheat and force Canada to bend to his demands. He assumed Americans could just buy wheat from someone else if Canada didn't play along. He couldn't have been more wrong. When Trump hit Canadian wheat with a massive 25% tariff, Mark Carney didn't beg. He didn't panic. He didn't ask for mercy. Instead, he did something far more powerful. He sent Canadian wheat to Mexico, China, and Brazil, countries that actually wanted to buy it without the drama. Now, American bread makers are struggling to explain why your grocery bill keeps going up while Canadian wheat flows everywhere except the United States. In today's video, we're breaking down how Canada turned wheat into a weapon. We'll show you why American mills can't just replace Canadian wheat with homegrown supplies. You'll see how Mark Carney flipped Trump's tariff threat into proof that America needs Canada way more than Canada needs America. And you'll understand why the United States just learned a brutal lesson. Food security isn't something you play games with, especially when your neighbor to the north is feeding your country. Before we get into the full story, if you value deep dives like this one, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Stay with us for the news that matters most. Let's talk numbers. 90%. That's how much of America's wheat imports come from Canada. Every year, the United States brings in about 120 million bushels of wheat. Nearly all of it comes from Canada. This isn't about loyalty to Canadian farmers. It's about quality. Canadian wheat has special protein levels, gluten structure, and quality standards that American flour mills absolutely need. Spring wheat from Saskatchewan, durum wheat from Manitoba, high-protein varieties that blend perfectly with lower-protein American winter wheat to make flour that bakes consistently every single time. For decades, American millers built their entire supply chains around Canadian wheat. They designed their facilities to process it. They created quality control systems based on it. They developed product lines that can't function without it. Then Trump imposed his tariffs, a full 25% tax on every bushel of Canadian wheat crossing the border. His goal: force Canada to give in to his trade demands, lower dairy tariffs, remove digital service taxes, bow to American priorities across the board. The tariff was supposed to give Trump leverage. Instead, it turned into a complete disaster. In 2024, American wheat imports cost $784 million. That might sound small for a country that grows 50 million tons of wheat domestically, but those imports are critical for specialized products: premium bread, pasta, high-quality flour, products where protein content makes all the difference. Trump's tariff added $196 million in costs overnight. Companies that were importing $5 million worth of Canadian wheat suddenly owed an extra $1.2 million. Flour mills faced an impossible choice: either pay the tariff and raise prices or find alternatives. The problem? There were no alternatives. Canada ranks as the world's third largest wheat exporter, right behind Russia and the European Union. In 2025, Canada produced 36 million tons of wheat and exported 24 million tons. Only a tiny fraction of that went to the United States. The rest shipped to more than 60 countries around the world. Mark Carney did the math: lose 2% of exports to the United States or find new buyers who don't insult Canada every week on Twitter. The answer was crystal clear. Carney announced that Canada would double its non-American wheat exports over the next 10 years. When he first said it, people thought it was just an ambitious goal, but then Trump kept threatening, kept insulting, kept pushing tariffs. Suddenly, doubling exports became an urgent national priority instead of a distant dream. Canadian Pacific Kansas City, the railway company that connects Canada and Mexico, threw a celebration. They welcomed a massive train loaded with Manitoba wheat headed straight to Mexico City. Mark Carney personally showed up. He stood alongside railway executives and Mexican officials. He called it proof that Canada doesn't need to rely on America. The message was loud and clear. Canadian wheat was traveling through the United States without stopping, using American railroads as nothing more than a bridge while delivering the goods to Mexico instead of American buyers. Then China entered the picture. Carney negotiated deals that removed tariffs on Canadian canola, seafood, and agricultural products. Wheat was part of the package. China is the world's biggest wheat importer. They buy 10 million tons every year, mostly from Australia and France. Now, Canadian wheat is competing for that massive market with full government backing. Brazil also became interested. South American buyers usually purchase from Argentina, but Canadian wheat offers higher protein and better overall quality. Carney pushed trade missions. He arranged the logistics. He made it easier for Canadian exporters to ship south to Brazil instead of south to the United States. Here's the thing. The United States produces 50 million tons of wheat, mostly winter wheat, lower protein, different gluten structure. It works for many products, but not all. American millers need Canadian wheat to blend with domestic varieties. Pasta requires durum wheat. Canada produces 5.4 million tons of it. American durum production is limited. High-protein bread flour requires spring wheat with 14% protein. The Canadian prairies grow that naturally. You can't just swap one type of wheat for another. Canadian Western red spring wheat has unique properties developed over decades. You can't replicate it by planting different seeds somewhere else. Mills operate on razor-thin profit margins. They purchase supplies months in advance. Trump's tariff threw everything into chaos. Flour prices jumped. Bread manufacturers complained. And Trump had no real answers. Then Carney gave a major speech at the Canadian Club in Toronto. He said, quote, "The decades-long process of ever closer economic ties with the United States is over. Our strengths of being connected to America are now our weaknesses. Our economic strategy must change rapidly." End quote. That wasn't just talk, that was policy. Canada spent decades building trade relationships based on one big assumption, that the United States would honor free trade agreements, respect supply chain integration, act like a reliable partner. Trump destroyed those assumptions. He slapped on tariffs while claiming national security threats. He called Canada the 51st state. He insulted Carney publicly and repeatedly. Carney stopped negotiating, stopped begging for special treatment, stopped treating the United States as the only market that matters. Instead, he built alternatives: wheat to Mexico, canola to China, oil to Asia, energy to Europe. Every single time Trump made a threat, Carney responded by finding another buyer. The United States Trade Representative Office published a list of demands for Canada, 5 major items: dairy market access, digital services tax repeal, provincial alcohol restrictions removed, procurement policy changes, energy policy adjustments. Carney refused every single one, not because he's being difficult, because Trump has no leverage. Canada can sell wheat anywhere. America can't buy it anywhere else. Mexico's president negotiated exemptions from some tariffs. Canadian farmers faced the full impact, so Carney changed direction. Canadian wheat started shipping to Mexico. Better quality than Argentine wheat. Competitive prices. Mexico bought what the United States turned away. The railway ceremony in Mexico City was political theater at its finest. Carney stood with Mexican officials celebrating exports and praising cooperation. He made it clear that cooperation doesn't require surrender. Mexican media covered the event extensively. They contrasted Carney's diplomatic approach with Trump's aggressive tactics. American agricultural groups watched nervously. They realized the same pattern could apply to other products. If Canada successfully sells elsewhere, American buyers lose access and prices go up. China imports 10 million tons of wheat every year. Australia supplies most of it. France ships significant amounts. Canada was a minor player until Trump's tariffs changed everything. Carney visited Beijing. He met with President Xi Jinping. He negotiated deals covering multiple agricultural products, including wheat. China agreed to lower tariffs on Canadian imports. Canada agreed to make shipping easier. The deal wasn't about completely replacing the American market. It was about proving Canada has choices. If American millers won't buy Canadian wheat because of tariffs, Chinese buyers will at fair market prices without insults or threats. Trump called the China deal a betrayal. He posted on social media threatening 100% tariffs if Canada pursues trade with Beijing. Carney ignored him because Trump's threats only work if Canada has nowhere else to turn. China, Mexico, Brazil, the Middle East, North Africa, they all want Canadian wheat. The United States is not irreplaceable. American wheat farmers produce 50 million tons and export 25 million. Canada isn't a major buyer, but Canada is a serious competitor. When Canadian wheat redirects to Asian markets, competition gets fierce. It undercuts American prices and takes market share Americans built over decades. Trump's tariffs hurt Canadian sales at first, but Carney's diversification strategy flooded Asian markets with Canadian wheat, stealing business from American farmers. The American Farm Bureau issued a warning. Retaliatory tariffs threaten 20% of agricultural exports. Canada and Mexico are America's top two export destinations at $30 billion each. Trump threatened both of them. Wheat shows the bigger problem. American farmers depend on exports. When markets close, their incomes collapse. Flour prices in the United States jumped 11% in early 2025. Bread costs went up. Pasta costs went up. Baked goods costs went up, not because of shortages, because tariffs increased costs for manufacturers. Flour mills pay the tariff. They pass the cost to bakeries. Bakeries pass them to grocery stores. Grocery stores pass them to you. The person buying bread at Walmart doesn't know why prices increased. They just know it costs more, and they blame whoever's in charge. Food inflation remains a political disaster. Trump promised to lower costs. Instead, his tariffs raise them. The administration tried blaming Canada. They said Canadian suppliers were price gouging. Industry groups immediately proved that wrong. Prices rose because tariffs added costs. Simple economics. Carney didn't need to fight back with counter tariffs on wheat. Market forces did the job. American buyers paid more. Canadian sellers found other customers, and American consumers absorbed the pain. Trump quietly stopped talking about wheat tariffs. No announcement, no reversal. He just stopped mentioning them. The political cost became too obvious. Flour mills complained. Bakeries complained. Republican senators asked for exemptions. But Trump can't admit mistakes. So instead of reversing course, he stopped enforcing the tariffs as aggressively. Customs started speeding up shipments. Trade groups reported fewer delays. The tariff still exists on paper, but clearance improved. Carney noticed, but he didn't change his strategy. The damage was already done. American buyers proved they're unreliable. Canadian exporters need permanent alternatives. Canada exports wheat to over 60 countries. Indonesia buys 2 million tons. The Philippines buys 1.5 million. Japan buys 1 million. Bangladesh, Vietnam, Thailand, Iraq, Yemen, Morocco. Each one wants reliable supply, consistent quality, and fair prices. Canadian wheat production hit record levels, 36 million tons. Great harvest, good weather, strong yields, more wheat than Canada can consume domestically, which means exports. The question is where? Historically, 15 to 20% of Canadian wheat exports went to the United States. A small share, but valuable because American millers paid premium prices for specific varieties. Trump's tariffs made that market unstable and unpredictable. So Canadian exporters looked elsewhere. They found willing buyers, they signed contracts, they built relationships. America's share of Canadian wheat exports is falling, not because Canada is punishing America, because Canadian farmers need reliable customers, markets that don't threaten tariffs every time there's a political argument, markets that respect agreements, markets that pay on time and don't insult their suppliers. Carney set a clear target: double non-American exports by 2035. It seemed ambitious at the time. Now it seems guaranteed because Trump gave Canada every reason to diversify. Every threat, every insult, every tariff pushed Canadian exporters to find alternatives, and they found plenty. Food security means your population can eat no matter what happens. Wars, droughts, trade disputes, natural disasters. Countries that depend on imports for basic foods are vulnerable. Countries that produce their own food are secure. The United States grows enough wheat to feed itself, but not enough of the right kinds of wheat for all products. Pasta needs durum. Premium bread needs high-protein spring wheat. Those come from Canada. Tariffs don't change that reality. Trump gambled with food security. He assumed Canada would give in rather than lose American business. He assumed American millers could find alternatives. He assumed consumers wouldn't notice price increases. He was wrong on every count. Canada didn't give in. They found other buyers. American millers couldn't find alternatives. Consumers noticed immediately. Now the United States faces a choice: remove tariffs and fix relationships, or keep policies that raise food costs for no benefit. Carney made food security the foundation of his trade strategy. Canada will sell to reliable partners, countries that respect agreements, markets that don't weaponize trade for politics. If the United States wants to be that partner, great. If not, Canada will sell somewhere else. The leverage isn't with Trump, it's with Carney. Wheat isn't the only example. Lumber, potash, oil, electricity, aluminum. Every commodity follows the same pattern. Trump threatens, Canada finds alternatives, industries panic, prices rise, Trump backs down, but the damage is done. Lumber mills ship more to Asia. Potash goes to Brazil and India. Oil flows to China. Each threat speeds up the trend. Carney didn't start this. Trump did, by treating Canada like an enemy, by assuming Canada had no options. Canada had options. Trump thought trade was about winning and losing, about leverage and forcing people to submit, about making partners accept American demands or suffer. He approached Canada the same way he approached China: threaten tariffs, demand concessions, declare victory when the other side caves. Canada didn't cave because Canada isn't China. It's America's closest ally, largest trading partner, longest undefended border, shared history, integrated supply chains, mutual defense agreements, cultural ties, family connections. Trump treated Canada like an enemy, and Carney responded by showing that Canada has better options, which it does. Europe wants Canadian energy. Asia wants Canadian resources. Latin America wants Canadian agricultural products. The United States is the largest market, but not the only market, and definitely not a market worth begging to access. Trump's biggest mistake was assuming Canada needed the United States more than the United States needs Canada. Wheat proved otherwise. America imports 90% of its wheat from Canada. Canada exports less than 20% of its wheat to America. The dependency runs one way: north to south, not south to north. Mark Carney stood in Mexico City celebrating Canadian wheat exports. Meanwhile, American millers scramble to find alternatives that don't exist. American consumers paid higher bread prices, and Trump's tariff policy collapsed under its own weight. Canada wins because it diversified trade, built relationships with reliable partners, proved it can sell wheat, lumber, oil, and potash to countries that respect agreements, showed that American threats are empty when Canada has alternatives. The United States loses because it raised food costs for its own people, destabilized supply chains its industries depend on, pushed away its closest ally, proved to the world that American trade policy is unreliable. That agreements mean nothing. That partnership requires submission. Trump thought he could force Canada to beg. Instead, Carney froze America's wheat supply, redirected it to buyers who actually want it, and left America to explain why threatening your northern neighbor was worth higher bread prices. The wheat harvest in Saskatchewan continues, 36 million tons, shipping to 60 countries, just not as much to the United States anymore, because Canada learned what Trump refuses to understand. You don't gamble with food security. You don't threaten the hand that feeds you. And you definitely don't assume your neighbor will beg when they have better options. So what happens next? Will Trump reverse course? Will America repair its relationship with Canada? Or will food prices keep climbing while Canadian wheat feeds the rest of the world? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And subscribe for more breaking news analysis you won't find anywhere else.